Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Lots lined up. Let's get started. How much power is too much? For Xi Jinping, this question does not exist. He wants his power to be absolute, if it wasn't already. He now wants a resolution enshrining his role as a leader of China. This will put him in the same club as Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. A Communist Party conclave in Beijing, where the resolution is set to be passed, has implications not just for the people of China, but for the entire region. There's also the question of what does Xi Jinping plan to do with the third term. He seems to be already preparing for raising tensions with the US and India, using mock-ups of US warships and escalating tensions with India at the LAC. On Gravitas tonight, we will tell you how Xi Jinping's consolidation of power is raising the threat of a conflict. I'm Molly Gambhir, also on the show for you tonight. If a bitter tussle with the Pakistan army was not enough, Imran Khan finds himself on a sticky wicket once again, losing the fight against inflation and surrendering to radicals. A stampede in Houston has sent shock waves across the world. 8 people have died, several at a concert fell unconscious, and there are no clear answers. Taliban infighting is now reaching its peak, with the rift within the group now out in the open. We will tell you what it means for the people of Afghanistan. A minister of a nation fighting the impact of climate change issues a desperate appeal standing in knee-deep water. That's a special report coming up. First, as always, Gravitas Global Headlines.
A case has been registered against the Pakistan Maritime Security Agency for firing at a boat of Indian fishermen. The Pakistani Maritime Security Agency had opened fire on Indian boats off the coast of Gujarat, killing one and injuring another on November 6th. Iran says that the US should provide assurances that it will not abandon the nuclear deal with world powers if talks to revive the pact succeed. Iran's foreign ministry says that Washington must lift all sanctions imposed on Tehran and recognize its fault in ditching the pact. The United States lifts restrictions on international travel for the first time in nearly 2 years. Non-US citizens can travel to the US if they are fully vaccinated. Travelers over the age of 2 must show a negative COVID test report. In a shocking statement, Australia says it will sell coal for decades into the future after spurning a pact to move away from the fossil fuel to halt climate change. This comes as global leaders negotiate a deal at the crucial COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. Sudan's pro-democracy groups launched 2 days of civil disobedience and strikes, demonstrating against the military coup in the country. However, massive internet and phone disruptions curb participation in these protests. Tesla shares fell 7.5% in pre-market trading on Monday as investors prepare for its chief Elon Musk's proposed sale of about 1/10 of company's stake in the electric car maker following his Twitter poll. Massive floods triggered by heavy rain inundated streets and homes in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. The capital, Chennai, along with 11 other districts, were hard hit as residents struggled to get essential items. Astronaut Wang Yaping becomes the first Chinese woman to walk in space. She is part of a 6-month mission to the country's space station. Wang and her team completed a 6-hour spacewalk mission to install equipment and carry out tests alongside the station's robotic arm. Max Verstappen has landed a potentially telling blow to the F1 Drivers' Championship with victory at the Mexican Grand Prix. The Red Bull star leapfrogged the 2 Mercedes ahead of him on the first corner and controlled the race to claim his 9th win of the season. Verstappen now leads Lewis Hamilton, who finished second, by 19 points with 4 races to go. England have suffered a big blow at the T20 World Cup with in-form opener Jason Roy ruled out of the rest of the tournament. Roy suffered a serious calf injury against South Africa on Saturday. James Vince has been drafted into the squad as Roy's replacement ahead of the semi-final against New Zealand on Wednesday.
Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. When George Orwell wrote these words, he was imagining a dystopian nightmare. Today, these 2 lines aptly describe Xi Jinping's China. The Chinese president is not just controlling the present, he is now rewriting China's history in an effort to leave a mark on the future. A key meeting is underway in Beijing. The political elite of China is meeting behind closed doors. The purpose is to adopt a resolution, one that will pave the way for a historic 3rd term for the Chinese president. No surprises there. Xi Jinping was virtually assured a 3rd term the moment China got rid of the term limits for presidents. The question now is, what does he plan to do with the 3rd term? Will Xi Jinping's China go to war? 2 developments raise the threat of a military conflict. Number 1, China's aggressive deployments on the line of actual control with India. And number 2, the discovery of mock-ups of US Navy ships. China has built these dummy ships apparently to practice attacking them. On Gravitas tonight, we will tell you how Xi Jinping's consolidation of power is raising the threat of a conflict. Let's start with what's happening in Beijing. Today, the Communist Party began a 4-day-long meeting. It is called the 6th Plenum. Around 370 members of China's political and military elite are attending it. They are the Central Committee of the Communist Party. What is the Central Committee? It is the Communist Party's highest organ of authority. It includes provincial governors, party secretaries from different regions of China, as well as financial and military elites. These are the top leaders of the Communist Party. They meet every year to discuss issues and set policy in key areas. But this time, they are about to do something that has only been done twice before. They are preparing to give Xi Jinping his place in Chinese history. For this meeting, there is only one item on the agenda: a historic resolution on the achievements of the Communist Party. This resolution essentially will define the key events that shaped today's China. It will establish an official narrative of events from the past and set out a direction for the future. But for Xi Jinping, this resolution means a lot more than an official version of China's history. It will enshrine his role as a leader of China, putting him on par with Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. Mao and Deng are the only 2 leaders who have pushed such resolutions in the past. Now, Xi Jinping will enter the same league. Experts, in fact, say this resolution will be, quote-unquote, an extraordinary demonstration of power. It leaves no doubt that Xi Jinping will remain China's president. He faces no opposition from within. His grip on power is absolute. What does that mean? The world should expect more of the same from China, An authoritarian regime at the helm, one that will continue to provoke the world militarily. Already, China is doubling down on its territorial claims with India. The US Department of Defense has come up with a report. It describes how the PLA is steadily increasing its deployments. It is recruiting Tibetans. Reportedly, the PLA conducted a month-long recruitment drive in August. Around 400 Tibetans were recruited. The new recruits will be trained by the PLA. They are likely to be deployed along the India-China border. The PLA is deploying advanced weaponry as well, like howitzers, rocket launchers and choppers. And at the height of the border standoff with India, China equipped itself for the long haul. It deployed systems used for real-time communication on a battlefield. The PLA installed a fiber optic cable in the Western Himalayas, which would enable faster communication among the troops. Clearly, China wants to be prepared for a conflict, not just with India, but with the Americans too. Have a look at these satellite pictures now. This is a mock-up of a US Navy aircraft carrier. The Chinese military has built one for itself. It has been created in the desert of Xinjiang. The PLA has mock-ups of American destroyers as well. Why does the Chinese military need them? Apparently, for missile target practice. This entire facility is actually a weapons testing range. The Chinese military is preparing itself to fight American forces on the high seas. The mock-ups are being used to discover vulnerabilities and develop strategies to neutralize the carriers. Xi Jinping is seen as China's greatest leader since Mao Zedong. The gathering of the Communist Party in Beijing will give this description a permanent place in Chinese history. But this resolution has another purpose. It legitimizes the aggressive actions of the Chinese president, giving him a license to commit more military provocations. Xi Jinping will rule China for another 5 years, but he is also taking the country towards a dangerous future. How long will the Imran Khan government in Pakistan last? Will there be a new Prime Minister? Will he be from Imran Khan's party? Will members of Imran Khan's party switch sides? Or will the army pull off a coup? These are some of the questions doing the rounds in Pakistan's power corridors. The answer to all of these questions points towards a slippery slope that Imran Khan finds himself on. How did he get there? Number one, Imran Khan has severe ties with the military. Two, he has surrendered to hardline Islamists. Number three, there is record inflation in Pakistan. Let me break it all down. We start with the army. Winds of change are blowing from Rawalpindi. Meet Lieutenant General Nadeem Anjum. He is the incoming chief of the ISI, which is Pakistan's intelligence agency, the Inter-Services Intelligence. You can say that the ISI, along with Pakistan's all-powerful military, makes some of the most crucial decisions in the country. So this man, Nadeem Anjum, will now be heading the agency, and Imran Khan is not happy. Reports say that it took Imran Khan 3 weeks to give the go-ahead for Nadeem Anjum's nomination, his appointment. Why? Because Nadeem Anjum replaced a man very close to Imran Khan. This is Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid. He is the former ISI chief and is credited to have helped Imran Khan's party win the 2018 election. It is 2021. Pakistan's Army Chief General Bajwa retires next year. The country goes to the polls the year after. So Faiz Hamid and Imran Khan were likely to have struck a symbiotic deal. You know, Imran Khan helps Hamid become the next army chief, and Hamid in turn helps Imran Khan secure the 2023 election. Now, this plan fell apart when Pakistan's army proposed a new ISI chief. Imran Khan refused to sign the appointment and had a face-off with General Bajwa. Imran Khan ultimately had to approve the appointment of Lieutenant General Nadeem Anjum. So that is Imran Khan 0, Pakistan Army 1. While Imran Khan was fighting the army, He was also losing a battle to Pakistan's extremists. And this brings me to the second part of the story. Remember these visuals? They are from Lahore. And these protesters are from the TLP, that's short for Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. For over a year, this group has been protesting to expel the French ambassador from Pakistan and end trade with France. It all began last year when France decided to publish cartoons of Prophet Muhammad, and French President Emmanuel Macron supported the decision. Thousands of miles away from France, the TLP cried blasphemy, took up swords against France, made impossible demands, blocked critical highways, and sat endlessly in protest. Pakistan arrested the TLP's leader, Saad Hussain Rizvi, and banned the group. TLP members have been back on the streets. They are demanding the release of their leader along with the expulsion of the French ambassador. The TLP staged nationwide protests. Many turned violent, killing at least 21 people, including 10 policemen. The Imran Khan government should have ideally cracked down on the demonstrations. Instead, it decided to bow down in front of the TLP and sign a deal with the group. 2,000 TLP supporters have already been released from various Pakistani jails, and the ban on the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan has been lifted. In short, Imran Khan lost his face, his government's reputation, and a fight with the radicals. So that's once again a 0 for Imran Khan, with 1 each for the army and the radicals. We now move on to part 3 of the story. Consumers in Pakistan are struggling to make ends meet. Prices of essential commodities have shot through the roof. This includes sugar, petrol, electricity as well. The price of electricity, for example, has been hiked by 1.68 Pakistani rupees per unit, that is $0.0099 per unit. Imran Khan announced a 120 billion rupees subsidy, promoting it as Pakistan's biggest ever subsidy package. The voters were not impressed though. Some said Imran Khan's Naya Pakistan has become too expensive to live in. The opposition also slammed the subsidy. They said it is too little for 200 million people. Petrol currently costs 145.8 rupees a litre in Pakistan. For the first time in the country's history, petrol products have crossed the 110 rupee mark. Pakistan's consumer price index is up 9.2% as compared to the previous year. Inflation has hit a 70-year high, What's more, the number will only continue to rise, at least for the next 6 months. And that is according to a report by the Economist Intelligence Unit. Imran Khan's government is blaming all of this on global inflation. But how is this signaling an ouster of Imran Khan? Why does the tiff with the army, the loss to the radicals, and the battle with the economy sound a defeat for Imran Khan? You see, all that is happening in Pakistan sends out a message of instability. The army and the government cannot seem to agree on the appointment of the ISI chief, for example. This has never happened before. The appointment of an ISI chief has never before taken the shape of a controversy. So that's a first. And then you have the government surrendering to radicals. That definitely does not help Pakistan's already poor standing on the global stage. And on top of that, you also have a government that is failing to control record inflation. All of this reeks of instability, incompetence. While that's not news in Pakistan, at least Imran Khan previously had the army's umbrella to shield him from the showers of criticism. What's worse, the opposition has become stronger. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, PMLN, in particular, Sharif's daughter, Maryam Nawaz, has been leading massive rallies in Punjab. Experts say Imran Khan's PTI no longer stands a chance in the 2023 election. So the media is now questioning whether all of this will encourage the army to do the not so unthinkable. You see, political instability provides the perfect space needed for a coup. Consider Pakistan's first coup in 1958 or Pervez Musharraf's undemocratic takeover in 1999. Will Bajwa want to pull off a Musharraf? He has already exhausted the constitutional term extension, so a coup is his only way of staying in power. Either way, Imran Khan does not get to make any gains. On to Sri Lanka now. The Rajapaksas are also losing ground. The reasons are quite similar. There is an economic crisis. Colombo needs more cash to pay off its debts. Sri Lankans are facing food shortages. And if that wasn't enough, the Rajapaksas have shot themselves in the foot with a controversial move. Our next report tells you about the growing troubles of the Rajapaksas.
Sri Lanka is going through tough times. In the midst of an economic crisis, a political row has broken out. This is about a controversial set of legal reforms. It is called One Country, One Law. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa wants a single set of rules to govern every citizens and all communities. He created a task force to suggest changes and appointed a hardline Buddhist monk to lead the team. Reports say Hindus, Christians and Muslims were left out of the task force.
The final report of this presidential task force is due on the 28th of February. However, since its inception, a lot of minorities here in the country have voiced their concern and disapproval regarding the formulation of this special task force.
The move has led to protest. President Rajapaksa is facing criticism from within. His Justice Minister Ali Sabri decided to quit after the announcement of the task force. Reports say Rajapaksa hasn't accepted the resignation, but the Sri Lankan president is being slammed by all quarters. First, the Muslim community condemned the appointment of the monk. Now the bishops of Sri Lanka have opposed the One Country, One Law proposal. The Rajapaksas could have avoided this controversy. Already the Sri Lanka government faces many crises. The biggest one is the economy. Last month, international ratings agency Moody's downgraded Sri Lanka. It believes the island nation could default. By the end of September, Colombo had just $2 billion in its foreign reserves. That's not enough to cover even 2 months of imports. Sri Lankans are complaining about shortages of essentials like milk powder, sugar and cooking fuel. Now they could face a shortage of dollars. The Sri Lankan Central Bank has come up with new rules. It wants professionals, importers and exporters to convert their foreign currency earnings into Sri Lankan rupees. This could shore up the value of the local currency. But local media reports say these rules will discourage Sri Lankans from sending remittances. If the economic crisis wasn't enough, a row over fertilizers is straining Colombo's relationship with Beijing. It began last month when Sri Lanka barred a Chinese ship that was transporting organic fertilizer. Colombo had tested some samples. It found that the Chinese fertilizer was contaminated. The Chinese supplier is furious. It is accusing Colombo of negligence and is demanding $8 million. All these problems could put the political future of the Rajapaksas in jeopardy. A report claims their popularity has plummeted while the Rajapaksas enjoy a majority in parliament. The loss in public support could derail their legislative agenda. Bureau Report, World is One.
We now turn to the United States. Take a look at what happened in Houston over the weekend. 8 people died during a stampede. It happened on the 5th of November. It was day one of a music festival. 50,000 people were attending a sold-out concert. Things started going south at 9:30 p.m. Rapper Travis Scott had just come on stage when a wave of fans started trying to squeeze their way closer to the performance area. Suddenly, there was panic. Some people started falling unconscious. Some reportedly started suffering cardiac arrests. Many reported other medical issues.
Stage, I was pretty close, going back and forth sometimes with the crowd, and it was getting physical. It was grueling. Me, myself, I seen a couple people pass out, but thank God they were all right. They got back up.
Some weren't so lucky. At least 8 people lost their lives. One was 14, another 16, 2 were 21, 2 others 23. The 7th victim was all of 27 years old. The 8th is yet to be identified. 13 were hospitalized, 5 of them were under 18. So what really happened to them and what caused the stampede? 3 days on, there are no clear answers.
There was a lot of pent-up energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of, and that crowd just kind of, it was already big at 2 o'clock, honestly, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And
can pent-up energy alone trigger a deadly stampede? Or was there more to it? Those who attended the concert said they had never seen something like it before.
My friend got hit by a jug of orange juice, and it's like 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning.
There was points where I was like literally leaning back, like if it was in the Matrix.
Like randomly a cop car is stolen, driving around the middle of the concert. Like you could have crashed someone and killed them.
Well, in the beginning, like as Travis Scott was getting ready to go on, the whole crowd is just kind of pulsating.
A lot of people just looking up, just trying to they look like they're about to pass out, just trying to get space.
And here's where the story becomes scarier. Police are investigating the possibility that someone in the audience was injecting people with drugs. Those of you who follow the show regularly will be able to recall that we have been reporting on similar events in the UK at London's nightclubs. It is possible that the needle attacks have spilled over to the United States. Many of those who attended the Houston concert had to be revived with anti-drug overdose medicines. A police officer was also injected in his neck with a substance. He too had to be revived using anti-drug overdose medicines. Medical staff in Houston have confirmed needle marks. The question is, how did someone manage to sneak in drugs and needles to a concert? Were there no checks? No CCTV cameras, no security? Or has America forgotten how to organize concerts? From what we learnt, there were 528 Houston police personnel and 755 private security members working at the event. So what exactly were they doing?
Look at what happened at the Capitol with the people surging in, and they had nowhere near 50,000 people. But even law enforcement, with all of the tools, all of the technical know-how, was still unable to stop the people. So unfortunately, there's really nothing that can be done in those situations with that many people. It's a very large force and almost impossible to deal with.
What happened in Houston has sent shockwaves through the country. Authorities have opened at least 2 investigations, one of them criminal. Rapper Travis Scott says he is devastated.
I mean, I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening. And I'm gonna do everything I can to keep you guys updated and just keep you guys informed on what's going on. Love you all.
Let's now shift our attention to Afghanistan. The Taliban projected its military might today. Take a look at these pictures. They are from Kandahar. This is the Taliban's Islamic Emirate Army, quote unquote, a convoy of American military weapons, arms and helicopters. With parades like these, the Taliban is making a statement. It wants the world to believe that they are firmly in charge, but the Taliban has been unable to get its act together. 2 rival camps within the Taliban are waging a violent battle for more control. Our next report gets you the complete story.
Almost 90 days after they took power, the Taliban are strengthening their grip on power. They are installing their own men in key positions. A new round of appointments has been announced. A total of 44 Talibs are now in positions of authority. They have been given key roles.
Yesterday, they have announced 44 governors, police chiefs, and deputies of different provinces. That includes prominent provinces such as Balkh, Kunduz, and other places as well. Police chiefs and a new governor for the city of Kabul, or the province of Kabul, has also been named.
One name stands out on the list of appointments: Haji Mali. He is the new governor of the Logan province. Mali is considered to be a key aide of Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Taliban's interior minister, and a UN-designated terrorist. Mali was the architect of several suicide attacks in Afghanistan. He was the main recruiter of suicide bombers. Now he gets a place in the Taliban government. The Haqqanis are becoming more powerful in Afghanistan. They now hold key positions within the Taliban government, and they are installing loyalists to expand their sphere of influence. The Haqqanis have pushed high-profile members like Mullah Baradar out of the limelight. When the Taliban took power, Baradar was the most recognizable public face of the group. But now he is absent from key engagements, like the visits of the foreign ministers of Qatar and Pakistan, as well as the Moscow talks recently hosted by Russia. A bitter tussle for power is playing out behind the scenes. The Baradar camp is battling the Haqqanis. Recently, the Haqqanis tried to take over the Afghan cricket board. Members of the Haqqani camp visited the board's offices. They tried to install a new CEO. An announcement was even made through social media, but it was deleted hours later. Reports say members of the Baradar camp beat up Mirwais Ashraf, the man who the Haqqanis picked to take charge. Almost 3 months after the fall of Kabul, the Taliban cannot seem to get its act together. The ISIS threat is only growing, while key members of the Taliban are fighting each other for more control. Ultimately, it's the people of Afghanistan who are paying the price for this power tussle. Bureau Report, World is One.
You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. This famous dialogue describes our next story. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega has won a record 4th term in office. He is extending his rule over the crisis-hit country after a ruthless crackdown on dissent before the polls. The West is calling the elections a charade. Sanctions are looming over the long-time leader's head. But the former revolutionary remains defiant.
The year was 1979. The Sandinista revolution was taking over Nicaragua. Daniel Ortega had become a hero after toppling longtime dictator Anastasio Somoza. It was a victory for the left-wing revolutionary, who would go on to rule the country for 40 years. But 4 decades later, Ortega resembles the same dictator that he helped overthrow. According to preliminary results on Monday, the leader has secured a record 4th term in office, but not without veering away from democracy. It was in 1984 that Ortega won his first election. He soon lost it all in 1990 to opponent Violeta Chamorro. The defeat was what shaped Ortega's political life when he took office again in 2007. The leader did not want to make the same mistakes again, so he waged a war against Nicaragua's democratic institutions.
En Nicaragua no hay elecciones. En Nicaragua,
there are no elections. In Nicaragua, there is an electoral circus where Ortega chose those who will accompany him in his political circus.
He detained prominent opposition figures, criminalized any sort of dissent, shut down several political parties, banned campaigns by his challengers, and even shut down voting stations. All in the name of protecting Nicaragua's interest. In 2018, there were major protests against Ortega, so he clamped down on any dissent in the country. At least 300 people died in the crackdown. Over 150 more remain behind bars. This year again, 37 Ortega adversaries were detained. His party, the Sandinista National Liberation Front, was the only prominent one taking part in the polls. This fourth consecutive term makes him the longest-serving ruler in the Americas. But Ortega's problems don't end with this win. The West is calling the elections a sham, and international pressure is piling up. But the long-term leader remains defiant.
They say they have nothing to do with the act of terrorism they financed here in our country in April 2018. Maybe if those who entered the Congress should have also blocked the United States highways, it would have paralyzed the economy of the United States. There they would have launched an army, tanks and aircrafts at them.
Ortega's relationship with the US was never cordial. But this time, things have escalated further. US President Joe Biden has denounced the polls. They are planning sanctions on the new administration. Sanctions that Ortega can blame for the country's poor economic condition. Nicaragua is one of the poorest countries in the Americas. Between 2018 and 2020, its GDP has contracted by nearly 8.8%. More than 200,000 Nicaraguans have left the country since 2018. The latest polls could spur further immigration. For Ortega himself, life has come a full circle. He was once the darling Sandinista revolutionary of the West, trying desperately to overthrow an oppressive regime. Now, he is the one leading it. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
In Jerusalem, language speed dating is bringing the Jews and the Palestinians closer. What does that mean? A small group of Israelis and Palestinians is bridging the language divide through a learning model that replicates speed dating. Meeting once a week at a 19th century villa, the group of Jews and Arabs practice each other's language. WION's Jody Cohen getting you this special report.
Jerusalem, a city of political, religious and cultural divisions. Here, a small group of Israelis and Palestinians is trying to bridge a Hebrew-Arabic language gap through learning modelled on speed dating.
We should know how to speak Hebrew really well in this country, to be able to merge well in the community and find a good opportunity in a good field.
It's a project I'm very much connected to because I'm in favor of Israeli Jews studying Arabic as much as possible, because I actually believe in coexistence. I see that this is the only way to reach some kind of a peaceful routine of life here in this region we live in.
About 20 students meet weekly at a 19th century villa. They sit together, Jew facing Arab, Arab facing Jew. They practice each other's language and are guided by cards spelling out scenarios that prompt dialogue. Every 20 minutes, a whistle sounds, which is when the participants rotate partners across tables.
Palestinians in Jerusalem don't study Hebrew in school in any way. And it's the same for Israelis. If they do study Arabic, it's an Arabic you can't use. Therefore, we came up with this initiative. You can call it a civil initiative that directly meets this need of the ability to communicate with each other in each other's language. Out of this, the real important thing emerges is the meeting and the acquaintance.
Quick and cordial encounters help the Palestinians improve their Hebrew, required for dealing with the Israeli authorities, and Jews to deepen their grasp of Arabic.
I think that we both see them as very courageous people, because what they do is actually leave the comfort zone and cross some kind of mental border which many of us get stuck on. Talking in Arabic or Hebrew in Jerusalem has a meaning. It's not like learning Spanish. And what's beautiful in this language exchange is that once you have a Palestinian and an Israeli partner who share the same feelings of hardship and the same embarrassment of talking, and to break this barrier of fear together, in my eyes, it's worth everything.
Bureau Report, WION World is One.
A new school in the South Australian city of Adelaide is offering children from Indigenous Australian backgrounds a chance to learn in a new way. The founding principal says the mainstream curriculum is failing Australian Indigenous children. Take a look at this report to find out more.
These children are given the choice to learn Kaurna, the traditional language of the plains of Adelaide in South Australia. They're part of the first group of junior primary students at Ngutu College in Woodville in the South Australian city of Adelaide.
I think it's been made difficult.
Andrew Plastow founded the school and is now the principal. He believes that the public school system in Australia doesn't serve Indigenous people well.
All of our Aboriginal kids come with incredible skill sets that just weren't being acknowledged in a very, very Western-dominated education system.
At the school, the usual focus of the curriculum has been moved to put more emphasis on the arts and self-directed learning. Student Isabella Janes had the possibility of learning sign language for the first time.
My dad had a brother that couldn't talk, and I want to have the knowledge that he did with his brother.
The school only began this year and already has over 100 students. Around half of those students are Indigenous. Many of the children experience the facilities and various subject options of an elite private school at the cost of a public education, thanks to a mix of Commonwealth funding contributions. The school plans to offer those aspirations to high school students from next year.
After that part, it went really sad, and then...
We want children to see themselves as a mathematician, to see themselves as a musician, to see themselves as a scientist.
Indigenous Australians account for 3% of the population and have poorer health, lower education levels and shorter life expectancies than other ethnic groups. Indigenous adults account for 2% of the Australian population and 27% of the prison population. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
We end tonight's show with a special story from Tuvalu. It is a country located in the Pacific and happens to be one of the many island nations bearing the brunt of climate change. A minister from Tuvalu has decided to give a reality check to the world leaders talking climate action at Glasgow. He has sent a message to COP26 by standing knee-deep in sea water back home. Take a look.
This is how Tuvalu's Minister for Justice, Communications and Foreign Affairs will be addressing an event at COP26. Knee-deep in seawater, reflecting the reality of climate change. The message will be broadcast on the 9th of November. But Simon Kofe is already famous on social media. The photo of him standing in a suit with his trouser legs rolled up has gone viral. What is Kofe expected to say at COP26, or on the setting of his speech? Here's what reports say. The statement juxtaposes the COP26 setting with the real-life situations faced in Tuvalu due to the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. This is where Tuvalu is located on the globe. It is a Pacific nation and is at the forefront of climate change. Many of the countries from this region have not been able to send a representative to COP26. Why? Because of the Wuhan virus. Most of the island nations in this area managed to control the virus from China because of early and strict border closures. Stepping out for Glasgow will cost a representative a month of quarantine. So, a third of the Pacific Island nations today do not have a voice at COP26. The Tuvalu minister's video is expected to draw the much-needed spotlight on the problems back home. It is expected to send a message to Glasgow that climate action needs to be immediate, else many low-lying island nations will disappear. Take Marshall Islands, for example. A World Bank report in October said that the projected sea level rise could cost the Marshall Islands its status as a nation. This video is expected to generate the waves capable of hitting hard against climate inaction. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
Babestea hartzea. Nahikoa da zentzurik gabeko sistema batekin jarraitzea. Bada garaia sufritu.